Let's see if this works. All right, so let's bring it on my Clearwave Pro 100 channel. All right, so that's live.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's it.
Yeah. So it's I mean
Excellent connection.
it is really interesting, having that diversity of people. And I'd say there's a group of people that, that sort of lack of humanity is just passed on, you know. Um, I always say like I am because we are, and if you don't realize you're being watched by somebody, that person that's watching you is learning how to be you, right? And there's a lot of parents out there that don't realize that everything they do, they're being watched. You know, you take off your skis, you throw your poles to the ground, and you leave your skis right on the ground. Your kid's gonna do the same thing in a couple years
Mm-hmm.
because he thinks that's what he should do.
Well, there's certain things that are like subconscious. They go into your subconscious. It's
When it's like it's a
manner in which and means by which. So the manner in which is how you do something. Like, did I use my hand to set this down? Did I use a pair of tongs? But the manner in which is, or the manner in which is, did I do it carefully or not?
right, yeah, and it's yeah, and the manner in which is totally lost because if you at a certain point, if you got enough money,
Hmm.
the repercussions
Drop.
of your actions, yeah, they really cease to exist. Um, there's no there's no repercussion, there's no reason for these guys to care about you
Hmm.
it from their perspective, right? And I fight with that because I know that I can see that I can hear that in their voice. And sometimes sometimes you just got to let them go do their thing. But um, no, it really makes me appreciate the people that will sit and have a conversation with you and learn from you. And um, only takes one person to really change your mind on those things, to where you focus on the good eggs instead of the bad eggs. Um,
Sorry, it's just asking me to figure out how many keyframes per second I should be sending.
Interesting.
It's saying I'm only sending keyframes every 8 seconds, and I need to send keyframes every 4 seconds.
Sure.
So who knows what that means?
Right.
Otherwise, GOP might go down. That's what it says. So can I read you something from this
Yeah,
book? Because this will be
absolutely.
the basis of the future. This is the conclusion from chapter like 2 or 3 from the Master's Emissary. And this is about the differences between the brain hemispheres. I might have already read it too. I think I read it last time, but I just wanted to read it because it kind of sets things in motion. If one had to encapsulate the principal differences in the experience mediated by the two hemispheres, their two modes of being, one could put it like this. The world of the left hemisphere, dependent on denative language and abstraction, yields clarity and power to manipulate things that are known, fixed, static, isolated, decontextualized, explicit, disembodied, general in nature, but ultimately lifeless. The right hemisphere, by contrast, yields a world of individual, changing, evolving, interconnected, implicit, incarnate, living beings within the context of the live world, but in the nature of things never fully graspable, always imperfectly known. And to this world it exists in a relationship of care. The knowledge that is mediated by the left hemisphere is knowledge within a closed system. It has the advantage of perfection, but such perfection is bought ultimately at the price of emptiness, of self-reference. It can mediate knowledge only in terms of a mechanical rearrangement of other things already known. It can never really break out to know anything new, because its knowledge is of its own representations only.
Yeah, ever since we've kind of really started to talk about the differences between left hemisphere, right hemisphere, I've started to think about, lesson planning from this standpoint. And, how can I sort of experiment with this in my workplace? Um, because I think the rich have a very left hemisphere dominated. It seems like, the rich are the ones buying the creative art, right? They're not producing the creative art. And um, so my brain takes it to like, okay, I'm gonna be around a bunch of like rich golfers. How do I get them to think creatively in a very simple, like a very easy, simple exercise that is kind of a prompt, if you will.
Poetry.
Poetry for sure.
If you memorized a couple pieces of poetry, that would definitely tell you right off the bat what kind of a person that was. Maybe they might not like the type of poetry, but a person who's like severely left hemisphere dominant would dislike the entire situation. They would dislike being forced to listen, to be obliged to listen to the poetry
Right.
at all. Right hemisphere person would defer more towards the beauty of the poem and find some connection with it.
So maybe that's how I'm thinking like of taxidermy almost, right? Like it's like, okay, I'm creating this, sort of hierarchy of people that empathize with each other. Almost like a quiz that I can say, hey, these guys are very, very empathetic. These guys, can be swayed towards empathy, and these guys, I am wasting my time with this, or I have to, throw out the breadcrumbs of how to get them to exercise the right hemisphere.
Right, yeah, exactly.
And I'm thinking like, so one of the things that I'm thinking about bringing into is like the swing thought of the day. So, when you're playing golf, you have a swing thought, and day by day it might change, especially if you're a high handicap. You know, a person who's really struggling out on the golf course is probably having two or three swing thoughts, and the swing thought would be like, um, okay, keep my eye on that part of the ball. Swing thought might be, um, okay, get a full turn. Swing thought might be to keep your hands high or something. You know what I mean? Like it's not really advice to anyone but yourself,
Right?
but in the exercise of giving somebody else a swing thought, yeah, I'm really using my right hemisphere to try to create some of these swing thoughts that could just be funny, could be useless, could be really useful. Like one of the swing thoughts, my friend Tom Dolan, I'm on like the eighth or ninth hole and he just goes, clam chowder, man. I go, what do you mean clam chowder? Like, I love clam chowder. You know that, Tom. He's like, no, clam chowder. Like, take the club back, say clam chowder. Clam chowder. And there was a rhythm to it, and all of a sudden I hit the ball pretty well a couple times in a row, and I'm like looking over to Tom like clam chowder, baby, clam chowder, man.
It worked.
It worked because I think what it did is it took away so many of the other thoughts, so many of the things that were like troubling my mind on how to create a great swing. Um,
Well, not only that, but clam chowder is also something you can embody. You just described it with the the syllables or the emphasis as
Right.
being something to metaphorize your body, you're going to swing exactly like you would say the phrase.
Right.
So clam chowder is it's a word that like every brand would hope that their catchphrase would become like, where it becomes one single idea
Right.
rather than two disjointed ideas.
Sure.
It's like Nike's just do it, right? Like something like that.
Right.
Can't think of any other ones, but there's been some probably some slogans that don't ever get to that point.
Right. A ton of
The bad
slogans
ones.
and that this is the slogan graveyard,
Here, I'm going to show you. This is the Yakovlevian torque. Uh, so from underneath the brain, all of us have this asymmetry in our brains, where one side of the brain is like actually
a little bit more
forward,
protruded
more
forward, right?
protruded
Yeah.
in the front, and the less and protruded in the back on the opposite side. So that's the first biological clue that the division of the brain is much more profound than you would
Right.
normally think. Because
Right.
if the brain, as the doctor described it, if you need more space, you just grow the brain bigger.
Mm.
It's not a matter of accident that the right hemisphere would physically be in front of the
Right.
left hemisphere.
Interesting.
So those are some key points. Um, yeah, also here's something that's interesting. So here's an example of, whoops, here, this is an example of somebody who has both of their hemispheres intact. This is somebody with their left hemisphere damaged. And this is somebody with their right hemisphere damaged and left hemisphere damaged. So the first one is both hemispheres intact. Second one is right hemisphere damage. And that's what you see on the TV shows when they're like, oh, draw a clock. If a person only draws half a clock, then it tells them that they had a stroke. But it only tells you if you had a stroke on the right hand side of your brain. Because the left hemisphere of the brain is so biased that it literally only cares about that side of the tree.
Right.
It just ignores, and people who
It's
have
totally biased.
strokes on the men who have strokes on the right hemisphere will just shave one half of their face, just the part of the face that the left hemisphere is in control of, and completely ignore the other
Right.
half of the face. So that's another.
And that's evidence of, like you said, that's evidence of, the rich kind of seeing you, like being locked into that hemisphere and kind of moving forward kind of in their own ego, right? Their own bias of, I'm here, but I'm here to do this. So the people that are associated with this, they're peripheral, you know.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like when you do a math problem and you simplify the fractions. You don't regret the fractions that you just simplified, that now they're gone,
Right.
because it's an abstraction. So when humans become an abstraction, that is very dangerous for the humans that have. And I shared with Elon Musk on Twitter. I don't think you read it, but he was describing a situation. I was like, I had to invent a word for that, which is abraction. Abraction is the damage or the error type for when an overgeneralization damages individuals. Because ab means to pull away and
Right.
action means to break apart, and
That's
so we
not
need words for that.
right.
Yeah.
It's true. I mean, I'm finding that, well, the last time we were on, we talked about Japanese word.
Ikigagi.
Ikigagi. Yeah. And
That's the Venn diagram of
I learned another word
three,
from, yes,
where what you do, the ideal activity that you can do with your career slash vocation slash time would be a three-way overlap between something that you love, something that the world needs, and something that you can earn money at. And the center point is ikigagi,
see, and that's,
if I understand it right.
I feel like that's a new word, you know what I mean? That they sort of found that represents this thing, right? And I learned about another word that they came up with. I can't recite it because I'm terrible at reciting languages, but the word means to describe a person who is living only in, cyberspace, essentially,
Hmm.
right? That that the outside world is something that is to sort of deal with and then come back to your life, which is, it's the AI, your AI girlfriend, right? It's your social life that is not outside, it's at your computer, right? And I was having this great conversation with the lifty yesterday about just gamers and how um, this sense of escaping into their own world is really so strong. And when you bring up some real life issues and you try to get to who this real person is, a lot of times um, the guys you're playing games with, they they push against it so hard because it's like reminding them of something that, putting them into a place where they're not totally comfortable, right? And I've been thinking about this idea of comfort for the last like day or two, right? Like
Sure.
because I finally get my spot, right? I've got um I'm gonna purchase a vehicle so that I can swap out the vehicle and be there, right? Like um I'm thinking about getting a dog because these are
Are you talking
dog
about the
friendly.
Japanese word that says that you should look at life as a series of hindrances? Oh, no, you're saying, okay, that's a different
No,
word.
it's a word for these people that are living sort of I would describe it like sort of in the matrix, right? That these people are
I
voluntarily.
got a good example. I saw a Japanese woman being interviewed in Tokyo, was asked the question that in Britain the population is so that the British are now the minority. Would you be okay with immigration to reaching such a level in Tokyo that you were a minority? And she goes, yes, if it didn't affect me.
Defecting?
If it didn't affect
Oh, if
me,
it didn't affect her. Wow.
she would be okay with there being Japanese people being a minority, but her caveat was
If it didn't
if it
affect me.
didn't affect me.
Which is so interesting
But
because it's like, but that's what I
that's the
mean.
outcome of that point of view.
But that is, I think that point of view is rampant. Like comfort, for whatever reason, is this giant illusion that like people have figured out, oh, you just want to be comfortable. You want to know where your food's going to come from. You want to know what your housing situation is. You know what I mean? You want your social life taken care of, and so much of this stuff now is housed in cyberspace, right? Um, Especially the social side of it. Food, God, food has become so convenient, right? Fast food, um, uh, food shipped straight to your house, right? And it's gone so far away from where'd you get that? How'd you prepare it? And do I like it? Like it's just I know that I'm gonna like it because it's designed for me to like it and it's right over there. I don't have to gather these things, gather those things, and even like going to the supermarket to create a meal has become sort of this thing of the past, you know?
Here's something on activity and passivity from the brain hemisphere's point of view, which I think is partially relevant here, pretty much. Activity and passivity, I described as apparently passive the openness of the right hemisphere to whatever is. That is because in the
Hmm.
absence of an active will, this is how the left hemisphere sees it. So the left hemisphere would see unbiased openness to whatever is as being an absence of will.
Yes.
But there is a wise passivity that enables things to come about less by what is done than by what is not done. That opens up possibility where activity closes it down. The dichotomy, the difference between activity and passivity, comes about from the standpoint of a need for control. Passivity, from this perspective, is a loss of control, loss of self-determination, loss of the capacity for the effective, that is to say, useful interaction, and failure of instrumentality. However, this takes no note of all the important states of affairs, beginning with sleep and ending with wisdom, discussed earlier in the chapter, that cannot be brought about by an effort of will, where in fact an open receptiveness which permits things to grow is actually more productive. It is something like what Keats described as negative capability, that characteristic of a man of achievement, namely, when a man is capable of being in uncertainties, mysteries, doubts, without any irritable reaching after fact and reason. He sort of added something at the end there that made it a little bit more complicated. But yeah,
No, I think that's great. I think that really is great. I have always catered to that right side. And I
yeah,
think
I
the
think I
more that
know
we
that about
talk
you.
about it, the more I realize that's where I naturally
Yeah,
care to be.
sure.
Um,
It makes you special. It makes you unique amongst people. The vast majority of people are bought into an idea of objective control, and they see it unadvantageous to take many of the perspectives that you embrace.
right. No, and I,
You and I as well. I struggle with it myself. I happen to be a very left hemisphere dominant person, hyperlexic,
mm,
good at symbols and abstraction, but also at the same time I understand that that's not where the things in life that really give value to being alive come from. They just don't come from that field.
right.
Well, I thought they would if I studied programming, if I studied, even music, and did art, that it would earn me the ability to enjoy the finer things in life. But actually, the ability to earn actually, for me, not for everybody, not for some people out there that are very wealthy, they never had to grow up or they never had to find balance. They're still pretty disbalanced, and the world's kind of like, you're good. Just keep doing it. You're
It
okay.
is, man. It is. It is. And at some point, we're gonna go through it where, you know what, the history of humanity, there's not many people that had it this comfortable. You know, we are gonna have to go through it at some point. And I would hope that going through it would just be a realization, not something so dramatic, so violent that it, you know,
Resets or destroys everything that's already been built.
which has already happened and so many times over, right? That if we're going to have history in our classes and we're going to spend time with it, we have to stop doing the same things that we've been doing.
You know what? There's a show on TV called right now called The Three Body Problem. Have you seen any ads
Oh,
for the three?
Netflix,
Yeah,
right?
the three body problem.
I haven't seen any of this, but it's popular, and
Okay,
I'm
so
thinking about checking it out. Have you checked it out?
yeah, yeah, and I was about to say okay, it would be a spoiler. So, are you okay with?
I'm cool with spoilers, man.
Okay, so this is a spoiler alert, but a little vaguely. It's not about the whole story, but the difference between what we've experienced, and you talk about safety and comfort.
Yeah,
There's a point in the script where these other entities were asking us to consider the differences in how we evolved versus how they evolved. And in our case, we started many, years ago when we discovered fire, and then, then it was the machines, some machines, the Industrial Revolution, then it was quantum computers, and it just went in this straight line. Whereas if there was another species that was constantly being obliterated, constantly, because of forces outside of their control, how long did it take for them to reach each level of science that they had? How many thousands of times longer?
right.
And how much more appreciation did they have for every moment that they were alive. And
To me, that's the most obvious part, though, dude. It is like we're killing ourselves over and over and over again just to say that we're the best for a minuscule amount of time.
okay, that leads me to let's see, this would be a good subject matter. Um, that there's research constantly being done on ways to extend human life. And one of them is to use mRNA to produce antibodies that would attach themselves to senescent cells. Are you familiar with that term?
Uh,
So you have regular cells, you have cancer cells, which are of a certain type, and you have something that's very similar to a cancer cell, but it's really an old age cell. It's a senescent cell, meaning that it doesn't do what it's supposed to do, but it still reproduces and divides, and it induces other cells around it to do the same thing.
Interesting.
So one of the technologies would be an mRNA vaccine, which produced spike proteins that would attach to, that would make the immune system respond to those spike proteins and then attack any cell that had those spike proteins, thereby fighting an infection.
Mm.
This technology would make antibodies that would stick to senescent cells and cause the immune system to kill them. So and the same thing would
Sure.
apply to cancer. And the idea is that
Right.
if you can do that, you can extend human life. So that's kind of an interesting subject, but I kind of wanted to bring that up in the sense that I sort of believe that that with age does come wisdom. I'm sure also madness and megalomania could come with age,
Ooh. You know,
but
you're right. I mean, I'm such an optimist. You're such an optimist that like right when you consider, oh man, with age come wisdom.
yes,
This would only help us to better understand nature
yes,
and respect it for the time that we have with it, right?
yes,
And but it's interesting to even just try to think about the other side of that and what kind of madness could really be created with somebody that is so stuck on that side that, and you see, like, so I'm just bringing an example, right? The oldest, richest guy, those guys don't even say hi to you, right? It's everything to them is a burden, right? Oh, I got to pull my pass out so that you can do your job with this. I'm here to go there. You're
well,
in
they
my
explained it.
way,
They explained it very well.
you know? And and they, talk about being set in the ways. Like, I,
Well, we should also introduce ourselves. I'm Adriel, the artist. This is my channel.
yes, Juan Martinez. What do you want to? I mean,
Height, age,
I
stat, and
do
location.
whatever I
My
need
guest.
to,
It's my
man.
guest.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
That's true.
this is a
Um,
test recording, kind of
yeah. Well, it's
live
fun.
test recording.
It's fun. It's fun to be in with you talking about just stuff. Um, I was gonna pull up my schedule so that you can kind of take a look at what I've got going on, but I do think that I've got some time in the weekdays to really devote to, I think the freestyle is really enjoyable. It'd be enjoyable for anybody to come on and kind of freestyle and um, go live and do this kind of
Right.
thing. And and I'm really looking forward to kind of diving into this concept of survival in a show. Type of format. Um, and I think we can kind of piece that together as a project and, sort of have our freestyle on a set day, set time that I can kind of plug in and program into my schedule.
Hmm.
Um, and then, I think project based, like, hey, this, um, your friend or whoever, hey, we've got a show. Let's make sure that it works for them, works for us, works for you, and let's really be dialed in on, okay, these are the questions we're going to ask. This is kind of where we're hoping to get to, right? And and almost like mock trial, kind of run through, okay, what are we really doing here? Are we getting to the left side? Are we getting to the right side? Is that happening in front of your face live?
Mm-hmm.
Or are we just, you and I are naturally good at getting to this stuff because I think just the combination of the way that our brains work, there's so much give and take, that you start to realize some things and expand, and we naturally sort of have a knack for the language of metaphors, and trying to make sense of all these things. Um,
Yeah, this for that I've got some show topic ideas. Personality, this is an article using AI, they've been able to find out that personality traits significantly affect gene expression, which correlates to some studies that they had done with people who were identical twins. One of the twins had schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, and they have the same DNA, right? But they have different little markers called methylation points, which they call the epigenome, are different. And that also ties in with some research that were saying that children that were severely abused, let's say severely abused, locked in closets in
yeah,
the dark, they found was up to 121,000 methylation points across their genome that are not there normally. So everything that's done affects which genes can be expressed and which ones can't. That's a would be an interesting subject. I found one that was more science, that they just discovered that groups of electrons can talk to each other and co-tunnel through substances as waves. Where they used to only be able to think that like an individual particle, if they get it to be like a wave, it can literally just be on one side of a barrier and then spontaneously appear on the other side of the barrier. Well, with new research, they can do that with hundreds or if not thousands of electrons. And the electrons can talk to each other when they're split apart. They can
interesting.
share information with each other.
Well, that probably changes like polarity in a way that's
Right.
right. I mean,
Well, they still have their charge polarity, but their polarity in sense of what an individual can do versus a group, comes into question.
right.
So stuff along that lines.
Yeah.
Yeah, polarity. And I think that's one of the things that you gain, and also one of the things that the subject is something that you gain and lose, which is when you think about higher dimensions, you certain polarities get lost because they're a little bit irrelevant. In two dimensions, something can either be on its front or its back.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
In three dimensions, it can be not only 360 degrees of freedom, but it can also have that in any orientation.
Right.
So every time that we leap above our limitations, all of these freedoms become available to us,
Mm.
which is what wisdom is essentially, I hope,
Right.
the product of, and also the thing that you have before you make those leaps. So I personally believe that if you strive for wisdom, then you will discover more.
Yes.
I think if
There's no
civilizations
doubt. And
strive
well,
for
and
it, they will
getting back
discover
to
more.
left and right hemisphere, your openness to that information, right, is the right hemisphere really, you know, allowing to grab, allowing that. I wonder how much, I mean, because like I always bring it back to, because I think naturally I'm concerned with education and how people learn, how far we've gotten on the left hemisphere side in public schools
Yes.
because of standardized tests, because of um, really, I mean, standardized tests, you got to think, have moved so much to the left side.
Okay. Yeah, I've been asking teachers for many years whether or not they felt that children were becoming more intuitive or less intuitive. Meaning, if they were told the story of the boy who cried wolf, for those of you who haven't heard of it, it is a story where there's a young, rambunctious boy who lives in a town that's plagued by wolves, and they have a survival technique that if one of the village members sees the wolf, then all of the men essentially stop what they're doing and get pitchforks and run out to
Right.
save whoever is shouting there's a wolf.
Yeah.
And so there's a boy who thinks it'll be fun he just gets a wild hair up his butt and
Yeah.
he decides he's going to do it for fun. So he does it the first time and they come running and he's like, there's no wolf. And the reaction is that they're disappointed, but they have not given up on him yet. The second time that he does it, then they are now fed up with him, but he doesn't realize it. And on the third occasion, he's not even intending to play around. He has been attacked by wolves. He shouts for wolf, but because of his previous choices, and I'm explaining already the morality of it, which I guess I
Right.
shouldn't have done it, is that, or I could have done it the other way around, was nobody comes for him and he dies.
Yeah.
And that story, which is not explained in the story, it's just the bare bones of what happened and what the kid said.
Right.
And I regularly ask teachers whenever I have a moment with them, that story, can children derive the morality of the story? And it is no. That for the most part, children cannot. They go, you've told me a story, but what is it supposed to mean? So I have to say that you say standardized tests may be increasing left hemispheric thinking, but something also is just missing. The intuition is not supposed to be missing too.
Well, I'm
Or
telling.
one, if you want to argue that
Right.
one's offsetting the other, one's drowning out the potential for the other.
That's why AJ, I think, and this kind of moves it into a totally different space, but people that have gone through trauma, serious child trauma, they can see it in other people because they recognize the patterns, they recognize the way that they're doing things, right? Like that. And I really believe in the sort of the beauty of trauma and how you can, it's not just this, um,
It's not like you burn a piece of toast, you have to throw it away and start over.
no, I
You
mean, I'm
believe
gonna
it
be
is,
really, I'm gonna be really honest and kind of open here, AJ. Most people ask me how I got to be the way that I am, and the way my little sister got to be the way that she is. I am, you know, a social person, and I've done well with that. To be, an elected official, to be a coach, um, to live a life that's really happy with a lot of other people involved in it. You know, I don't make a ton of money, but that's because I'm not focused on that side of that. I'm focused on having a really quality life. Um,
you're saying
and
difference
that's the
between
way
you and
that
your
I see
sister.
it. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And my sister had a very sort of straight and narrow life that she wanted to get to these accomplishments and um, live the life that she was hoping to live
Hmm.
and
Goal oriented.
goal oriented, right? And I've had my fair share of trouble, and she has not, right? So,
Did you have an emo phase? I'm just
well,
kidding.
no,
I'm
dude,
just teasing.
I had all kinds of phases, man,
Okay.
but I made it out, and um, but her friends from high school would ask me all the time, how did this happen? How did you guys end up so different? And I said, we're really not that different. We really care about people, love, and things that are important. We care
Right.
about those things together. But, I went through a, a period of childhood trauma that really left me considering what other people would go through. You know, um, I had, I had, nannies that were older than me that wanted my attention. And um, I was like 4 or 5 years old. You know what I mean? And I felt like I could give them that attention, whether that's appropriate or not. I didn't realize whether that's appropriate or not. I just cared that they needed my attention in that way. And as a young boy, I recognized that they were deficient in that need for something.
Hmm.
And
Wow.
I never held it against my abusers. I just felt like they had been through all of that before. So it's back to freaking Jesus on the cross, man. These people don't know what they're doing.
Oh, he's referring to a time that I was pointing out that I wrote a little essay about, well, computers generally don't function better when they're taken apart, and it's just interesting to think that, when Jesus of Nazareth was on the cross, he was quoted as saying, forgive them, meaning his attackers, for they know not what they do. So that represents a very competent, or at least a coherent state of mind, and it's just very surprising that a human body that would be going through so much pain and being betrayed and tortured would still be able to produce a logical sentence and an empathetic sentence.
Insane. I don't. And the thing that finally had me actually speaking out about it was that I was so proud of how I got to be that person. I was like, people need to know that I made the choice not to be the bad guy that hated everybody for this stuff.
Hmm.
And that was in front of me. I
That was a
could
choice you could have made.
I could have made that, no doubt. I had the capacity for the lying, for the deception, for building trust and ruining that trust. I have those. I know what that looks like, right? I am, because we are, right? I learned that by observing these kinds of people. But um, I think for me as a kid, the story of Jesus was so strong that I just felt like, these moral concepts came to me so fast that, and probably at the right time, when I was kind of sort of feeling like, wow, that's profound.
Hmm.
That's profound. And I was having nightmares, and I started praying, and um, and this was like 5 years old. I could visualize a space where I was with God, and it was just my own visualization that I had created, and I could get back there at any moment if I needed real solid prayer. And even to this day, having not been to church in years, having not really practiced, this, your conversation with God kind of thing, um, that visualization can kind of put you into that frame of mind. And I think when I first learned about Siddhartha and how the Buddha sort of had some of these really strong, experiences where he really felt like he was an eagle soaring above the world, that he could really take that on and visualize that as though it's something that's really happening. That hit me like a ton of bricks. That reality is what you sort of make it to be. And I wanted to study I wanted to study kids with autism. So I'm 22, 23. I took a job. It was difficult. It was really because I didn't. Autism to me was kind of this open catch-all that, you know, my first kid that I had, I recognized that it was more about the situation that he was in than the diagnosis that he had. This kid would show up maybe twice in a week for, pre-kindergarten, developmental kindergarten type of stuff. And he would come to school and he would personify himself as Hulk Smash. You know, he was he was the Hulk.
Hmm.
And when he went into Hulk Smash, he would destroy the classroom. And they needed somebody to curb his behavior and just not let him do that kind of stuff. And from a coaching perspective, it was kind of like, hey, well, don't do that. That's not. okay. But from this kind of right hemisphere side of how do you get this kid to really think about this? It was like just leading him to more play stuff. Okay, let's do this. And once he starts to get into this whole smash situation, let's take it out to where it's to the snow. Let's take it out to, where, and I put my hands out like this. And I say, Hulk smash right there, man. Smash. And he punched my hand like that. And smash, smash, smash. And I give him that, what he was wanting, you know? Because that's where his brain was taking him to, right? We're playing with Legos and I want to smash that. Smash these, dude. Smash these. That's where, And I started doing kind of some of these things and I started thinking, am I doing the right thing? He's smacking my hands. Now, what is he smacking his mom's
Yeah,
hands
is
at
he gonna want
home?
to smack her hands when he
Is the
gets home?
physical thing? And I left it because I didn't feel like I knew enough about how to lead people to that spot, that I could do it with sports. Hey, you've never played baseball before. Here's a ball. Here's how you play catch. Well, now we're playing catch. We get to hit the ball now. This is the game. Okay, we get to learn it step by step. Here's the breadcrumbs, you know. Um, but teaching children how to be human beings.
We first started with something that was you were going to describe the differences between you and your sister. And then you went to this, I don't say traumatic, but very obscure, strange experience that you had that most people would frame differently, maybe than the way that you frame it. But you saw it as a learning opportunity. And then to how you interact with some children that have a biological, neurological differences. So sort of the what I followed from
Yeah,
that.
no, I mean, connecting the two, right? That childhood trauma is, they say a sexual abuse is 1 in 4 kids. When you think about 1 in 4, there's a lot of people out there that have gone through something like that, and
Well, but that's not
that's a
the
lot of,
world we live in today is a world that's almost inverted from that, where some children are complaining that they are being abused because they're not allowed to be sexual.
right?
So that too is now something.
Yeah, and I think it sort of comes back to like, I don't know. I mean, I guess, for me, I've always felt like there was something special about the people that had gone through trauma because I sort of felt like I
Hmm.
had something special with me, that I was still able to I'm still able to have a good life regardless of having trauma, and that's okay. It's not the version that you might think you want from me because my family and you guys are the Kennedys, your sister's doing this, so why didn't you do that, right?
Well, I was answering the phone for a charity one time, and so I ended up somehow taking some phone calls from people that believed that I was a decision maker in some kind of grant money for them. And those conversations were still painful memories because of the supplication that the individuals the way that they would take on this persona of desperation to try to convince me that their cause or their problems were worthy. And it was impossible to tell what was um, augmentation. And a lot of it was augmentation. I mean, there's
Yeah,
10 ways to say the same thing when
right.
you're pleading. And I was unprepared for that. So I would want to take some kind of a training of some kind if I were to do something like that again, ever be put as being the person who needed to make decisions for somebody else's um, well-being because they have urgency. There was urgency there. But I think you were saying that in that case that you experienced, you sensed the individual was already damaged and your nervous system interpreted it as that they needed some kind of attention. Yeah,
Yeah,
some kind.
yeah,
You saw it as as they needed a help with something. or something.
Right.
Okay.
And that I could do that, you
Okay.
know, and I didn't understand that, you know, I'm a male and she's a female and that's what it is,
Yeah.
you know. It was that I was important to them. And I knew that because it was a secret, right? I knew I was important, but so important that it had to be a secret,
Mhm.
you know, so it was only until one of my abusers threatened to hurt uh, my family that I started to really um, feel that pain of all of it, and I just always suppressed it. You know, I was just sort of able to get past those things, the pain of it all. Um, and I'm thankful for it because I think it's given me the capacity, you know, and that's where I'm like so proud of myself, man. Like I'm thankful for that, you know, all the stuff that happened to me, man. I'm thankful for every bit of it.
Mhm.
It would never have put me into a place that I'm in now. Not to say that now I'm at the top of the world and riding a, you know, whatever, like,
Golden pony.
you're right, whatever you want to ride, man. I'm not there, but I don't necessarily care to be there, dude. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I,
I understand.
it's the same thing with the council. I want to represent people so effectively that I can't put myself in a position where I'm taken care of. I have to grind it out as though I'm grinding it out just like everybody else. There's nothing that hurts me more than to see somebody like on Facebook that's like, oh, well, these guys that make the decisions by it, you know, it's like somebody said, well, there's a ton of these potholes out in Haley, and you know, somebody's going to take care of these things, and another gentleman said, well, you know, those guys that make the decisions got a new car every year.
Oh,
And so they can drive over these potholes, they'll just get a new car.
at least someone didn't say the faster you drive over a pothole, the less it affects your car.
Well, you know, I don't know. Personally, that crushes me because, you know, and it gets me pretty angry because it's like,
It's not true.
it's not true, dude.
Yeah.
And if you paid attention just a smidge, you'd know that I'm not in a position like that,
Hmm.
you know? And that's why I think it's important that I stay there because if you get these opportunities, most people would just parlay them, parlay them, parlay them into bigger and better things.
I was watching somebody made a video that was like, I don't know the accuracy of it, but it was Nancy Pelosi's net wealth from the year that she went in to Congress and just jumping by millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars every year, which would be really nice to have the accuracy on that, but I've always been curious about that.
I know,
You said parlay. That's exactly what a parlay is, right?
I'm
Because that's
telling
a
you right
parlay you're
now,
talking about.
but that happens, man. It's because it's the game that they're allowed to play. And the first time I recognized this, it's like 2021. There's a ton of federal money out there, and I'm with Mountain Rides. I'm on their board.
It's a bus.
It's
It's
a
a
bus
bus system.
transportation.
Very,
Yeah,
very good bus transportation system up here.
very good. I
Very
was
good.
I was on the board for this, and at the time, like I said, there's tons of federal money that we had gotten keyed in on.
Yeah.
And so the decisions were, what are we going to do? And what was going to be sort of uh, useful spending for the whole valley was to work on our sustainability efforts and electrify our bus fleet. And that means purchasing new buses to the tune of, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars a piece.
Uh-huh.
And each one of these buses has a system installed in it that Ford purchased.
Ford.
So
Okay.
Ford had purchased this um, this public transportation, system essentially, right?
Ford had purchased a public transportation system.
They had, oh, God, I'm blanking on the freaking name now.
They're not the ones responsible for the psychedelic rave lights instead of the actual name of the stop, are they?
No,
You
no,
know that's a problem, right? The when it would read the sign of where it was passing, it's just like psychedelic red, green, blue,
oh, really?
flashing, seizure level flashing.
No,
You have to put tape in front of it.
it
Okay.
was,
Sure,
it
it was
was,
just a firmware update that went wrong.
well, and when I sort of was looking at this, because we're thinking of purchasing two of these buses, I'm thinking there's a ton of federal money out here. Ford did the right thing to get hooked up with these bus companies
Hmm.
so that they could put their systems in it and continue to sell these all over the place. And I'm sitting there thinking, why shouldn't I just purchase 100 shares of Ford right now?
You're not allowed to?
Oh, I'm allowed to. I mean, it's your money,
Yeah.
you know. I'm go on whatever platform I want to and put down the money and okay, you've got X amount of shares of whatever you just purchased. And so Ford's sitting there at like $6 a share at the time, and I'm thinking, okay, well, this, $500,000, line item for us is going to help them, sure, with their revenue, but dude,
No, I know, but
we're
it's what it
just the
represents. Your
valley.
knowledge of that it's representing your transaction represents potentially what 10,000 other interactions of the same type.
And what they should be doing, in my mind, because federal is going to give you money, you help, take care of your transportation, your infrastructure, like, so if the federal dollars are out there for this, people are going to snatch it up. It's easy because it's there. When you get awarded grant monies like that, it feels like free, because you've put the work in to get the grant. Now you just have to spend it in the way that you plan to spend it, you know? Um,
So it's leading you to a moral conundrum.
yeah, it's dangerous, man.
You're like, should I parlay this info into an action? Or not even parlay it, just an action that would be half parlay.
Well, and I think, when I refer to like parlaying, this experience into the next, right? Like, um, I would be, so I get on city council, the chamber wants me to be on their board because I'm a liaison to it. And now I'm going around to all the businesses, having these conversations or whatever, and realize where the hole is in the business. And so now I create my own business, um, because because I had those sort of connections to sort of do it, I guess. The one that, um,
Well, was there benefit? Was there benefit to the community and the chamber in the process?
um, for me,
So
it's,
otherwise, why would they ask?
well, right. I just wouldn't. My my brain won't let me manipulate like that. I feel terrible about those kinds of things. I can't just like get something over somebody without feeling awful about it.
Mhm.
And and so
Well,
that's,
how are you getting anything over?
um
Or its potential for it?
yeah, just a potential for it, right? That I don't know. It just seems sort of in that right, it just seems shady, but it's Ford, right? So I did purchase a couple of shares and made some money because it was in front of me like that. This is going to happen. I know this is going to happen because this is happening to us. And Nancy does it in everything because she knows what's going to happen. It's on the agenda. So once it's on the agenda, or even before the agenda, she's talking about it. Okay, let's take this up. Now she knows where the actionable item, where it could go, and she just moves the money, and
So what is the legalities of that? Is that if it's over a certain amount, or is it just any? Is there
Well, the
anything?
legalities of it, I think, is it has to do with insider trading. So if you have
Knowledge that's
information
not publicly available, right?
exactly,
Okay. But once it's publicly available, it's different.
that's right, and
Even
everything
for the
that you
elected
do,
officials?
everything you do as an elected official is public.
Yeah.
You know, uh, your agendas have to be published. All of that stuff is there, right? If you're thinking about putting this on the agenda, well, if you're going to talk about it at all, it has to be on the agenda. It has to be noticed. You can't bring things up if they weren't noticed. It's against the law, especially if you move on it. So these people know the process. They know that if you can get ahead of it and you know before the action is made, then you know that the action is just going to be, it's just going to create a reaction to, for everybody else, right? Okay, well, legislature passed this. Now the rest of us are reacting to what legislature did. So we're going to take our money out of there because of the restrictions or whatever, or we're going to put our money in there because they're supporting it.
Yeah,
Well, Nancy's already done that
this
at a
makes me
lower
think it'd be a
price.
good subject matter to talk about with like you and Spencer, or you and Spencer and this
Oh, I
other
would
guy,
love to because you
about
know,
specific issues, like about specific processes,
I get right
situations.
at Spencer because Spencer's a real estate guy now. I never known Spencer to be that kind of guy. You know,
Commercial real estate?
he's a real estate guy, dude. I don't know. He's selling. He was part of selling Bigwood. He's trying to sell the golf course there. He had a couple things going. He's got condos that he's trying to sell. Um, and I always felt like this, like if you're gonna make decisions at the government level, you're regulating against those guys. You know, like in some way, right? Like that if you were a real estate guy, you could always just make the rules for yourself up here.
Uh-huh.
And I just think it's too obvious, right? Like Haley's put hundreds of new units. If I was a real estate guy, you think people would be, I mean, people
Crying
should be
foul.
really questioning, like, wow, this guy is approving everything so that he can go and sell it and parlay all of this together, right?
Uh-huh.
And I mean, so many people that were like, Juan, you should be in real estate. You know the area. You know your parents are going to sell a house. You make 50,000 on that sale alone. And it just, when you think about the way your life, like how you want people to view your life, because that's kind of how I've always, just like, how do you want people to view you? I don't want there to be that muddy, you know, oh, you did this for this. Oh, you shady dog. I don't want that to be a part
Well,
of my
I wonder if
process.
artists ever feel that way when they make something that like I just splatted some paint on there and I'm asking for $9 million. I wonder if they ever feel that way.
Like they're getting people, like they're like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
sure there is. But I think the people that do it well,
Yeah.
that constantly get those prices,
Hmm.
they enter into a different dimension. They can put what that dimension is onto a medium, and they can it's not the transactional style, right? It's the transformational style. And those artists that really,
You know what this is? Just
what is it?
it's Sao Paulo. I think it's called Sao Paulo. It's just incense.
Oh, that's nice though.
Yeah, it's meditative.
It is nice. It reminds me of my Russian Orthodox church that I grew up in.
Oh, is that what it smells like there?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, they have,
Just reminiscent.
I wonder. They carry this huge thing that like they sway back and forth and um, kind of like blow at you too.
Yeah, the nunchucks.
Yeah. but it's not like the water like in Catholic stuff. It's like
It's incense.
it is really, yeah, it's incense like that.
I heard, speaking of, I heard this beautiful song that was, it's called Pobedna Pesma. And it's a Serbian Orthodox song about the end of times, and it literally sounds like the end of times. It's very beautiful. It's haunting and wonderful at the same time. I'll have to play it for you afterwards, see what your thoughts are on it, if you ever heard anything like it. It's very beautiful. It was the closest piece of music that I have ever heard that gave me the same emotional impact as when I was creating that piece right there. Like when that piece showed
Really?
up in front of my computer and I zoomed in on it, it was just so
Yeah,
emotionally overwhelming for
yeah.
me and in physically and just like this sense. There was never anything besides that I had felt, and this particular song that I'll play for you is it gave me the same physical feeling through my ears as my eyes was giving me with that.
I'm particularly sensitive to music like that too. I've got a lot of songs that I can go to that like put me into just a different place mentally, you know. I love classical music because of that. Disappointed that the radio here in Blaine County has changed their station for the classical, you know.
Was it bought by BSU?
Yeah, yeah, so they changed it.
Let's call them up.
Yeah, right. Well, I don't
They
know. I
need
mean, there's a lot of
hosts.
people up here that I think appreciate the classical pieces because of, you know, the reference to how old they are, like, you know, that noise was produced and created centuries ago, maybe, right? And you're hearing it again for the first time. Um, but it certainly puts you in a great mood. Today, I had my last shift as a ticket checker at Sun Valley, maybe ever. I was getting really, I was actually getting really emotional about it, kind of in my last few minutes because it's been such a good job for me. And my boss, who passed away last summer, gave me this job when I was, you know, a young man and didn't have anything. You know, I was 21, just living with my folks, you know, making like $200 a month coaching basketball. And um, this guy gave me the job, and you know, I found a family within that crew. And when he passed away, it was, you know, you felt like he was gone, like it was like the family was gonna break apart, but I wanted to come back and be a part of that family after he was gone and really, you know, try to keep his legacy going and how we interact with people as ticket checkers and, you know, just generally people right at the beginning of a Sun Valley experience, you know?
Yeah, so for anybody that's not familiar, so Sun Valley Ski Resort in Sun Valley, Idaho, Ketchum, Idaho, is was the country's first ski lift,
Yeah.
functioning ski lift, and primarily a town of 5,000 people ends up getting flooded with all kinds of people from around the globe to come and ski.
So,
And they're usually all walks of life, but many times in the, let's just say, above average income and asset tiers of people. And those are the generalized class of people that you're interacting with on a daily basis.
all the time, yeah, all the time. And uh,
So
it's
if
an
you
interesting
know
job.
somebody in your town that, like their family owns 12 Burger Kings, that's the kind of people that come up here.
Those guys can't afford it.
Oh,
You
okay.
know what
All
I
right.
mean? Like it's, you know, it's funny. Like I always tease because it's like, you know, the it's like the people that are up here that are just spending the money on it's the money's crazy. And skiing is crazy. It's trended so far into you got to have a lot of money to have this kind of experience. And skiing wasn't always that way. You know, when I first started skiing, you could still pack a lunch and get there and, you know, be up there for $40 a day. This year was 250. Um, Deer Valley's still over 200 right now, or Mammoth is still over $200 for a day ticket right now. So skiing is, I mean, skiing is crazy, and when you work alongside of all these guys that are just enjoying it, whether it's retirement or they got the money, whatever, um, you know, you have these everyday interactions because they want to come ski 100 days out of the year and get their pin, their 100-day pin that says they skied 100 days. Um, you make conversation with these people every day, and you check in with them every day. And I think that that's important. I, if I could do one thing with my life every day, it would be to check in on everybody. I don't have that kind of time, but I'm hoping that this kind of thing is that a little bit, that you could check in on me and I could check in on you, and um, you know, I ask people coming through my line every day, are you happy?
Hmm.
And
Don't ask me that.
well, if you're
Just kidding.
if you're at the ski hill underneath the sun, you're probably just gonna say yes because
Yeah, because you're there.
that's what it is, right?
We
That's
also
what
need
it
to
is.
eventually talk about if you think like, opioids are bad, exactly what's the blood level of enkephalins and endorphins that come into your body when produced by your body from skiing? It's high.
Oh,
It's really high.
yeah.
I mean,
I think it goes back to the kind of full circle of these comforts, right? That,
I'm not gonna be, not
you're
trying to be rude, but I kind of wonder. I mean, I know the answer to this, but I mean, in terms of like present mindedness and things like that in general, people are really high from skiing. They get really high from it, and so it's just an opportunity for them to get enjoyment that doesn't necessarily require the interaction, quality interaction with another human being.
golf is the same way.
Yeah, sure.
Golf is the same way, man.
Hmm.
I think
So
tennis
which
is some
side do you
way
get on? You
someday.
just get some skis on and go play golf? Or
Oh, I
make a
think I
community
think
in another
that's
way?
why I think that's why I feel a sense of importance in those industries. Is that's where I found sort of the comfort was that, like, I would be able to talk about it if it was brought up like that.
Uh-huh.
One of my classmates in high school had a similar situation, and he brought up some of those things, and all of a sudden we had become best friends.
Right.
Like, and I still recognize this guy as a good friend. Oh shit. Okay. We've been through some shit, man. And nobody else will, you won't know exactly what I've been through. I won't know exactly what you've been through. But we got something in common that goes way deeper than just the color of our shoes,
The
you
color of
know,
our shoes.
right? What we're wearing, right? This goes deep. And I don't know, I feel like, I wrote that poem, pulling people from the darkness. And I hope that that's what I get to do with just asking people how they are dealing with, because I've had a great experience with life to understand that if you are searching for comfort, problems will bother you always. If you are searching for growth and you recognize, problems as growth opportunities,
Hmm.
you recognize problems as just things to solve, then oh, life becomes so much easier. Yeah, I have to find a place to live, right? But it's a problem that if I can just solve it, then I can move on, you know?
Says my stream status is poor.
Wonder why.
No idea. Um, I'll have to figure it out, but I'm not sure how much of a delay we have.
Oh yeah, it's
Still
pretty.
talking.
It's pretty. It's pretty long. I looked in the. Oh, you look at my hands, right? Like I'm such a hands guy,
Yeah,
and so some of the times I'm recognizing like,
that's a long time ago.
yeah, well, you drank out of that cup a decent amount of time ago.
Yeah, I just filled it up with water.
Yeah.
It says no data. YouTube is currently not receiving any data. All right, I'm going to stop this then.
Okay.
Well, thank you for tuning in, and Juan and I are going to talk a little bit more, but
Hell yeah.
all right, so we got to figure that streaming out.